Alrighty, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another NBA Draft Profile with Dr. Fantasy, and as always, my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman. Today, we're going to be talking about Ousmane Dieng out of New Zealand, going through his wonderful international stats: 8.9 points, 3.2 rebounds, 27% on three-pointers last year, 39.8% from the field. 6'10", 7'1" wingspan, 216 pounds. Caveman, what do you have on Dieng here?
I mean, man, we're talking about. I think for first off, those averages make him sound not very good.
I know,
But
that's why I love going
that's
through them.
that's what it's like. International, you gotta take those stats with a grain of salt. They have they use different metrics, and then they end up with different numbers. I think that might be what it is. But I think the number one thing that stands out with Dean is I don't know if I've ever seen such growth in the middle of a season. He if you look at it his the early on with New Zealand this season, he was looking like a guy that might doesn't didn't even deserve to be drafted. He was not very good. Well, I saw a couple of his games early on, or highlights from some of his games. And that so, but by the end of the year, this is why now we're talking about him. Is he went from being barely a draft pick to, this is a guy that's gonna get picked somewhere in the first round, probably somewhere mid to late first round. But uh, I mean that growth. I mean that shows a lot. That shows I think that shows that he has. I think he's gonna grow relatively quickly. Like I said, he's a solid ball handler. Uh, so I don't like the international stats kind of don't really tell the whole story, especially being like you said 7'1" wingspan, 6'11". So for his size, that's definitely I think a strength at his size, and then just his self creation is the final thing I'll say. Like he goes especially he loves that little pull up 3-pointer. I think that's a big part of his game and a strength. I don't think he's a 27% 3-point shooter at the NBA level. I think he'll be a little bit better than that. And if he's not, he's going to be a bust, which I don't think he will be. But I think so. I think he has a lot more shooting potential than the numbers indicate.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, and I'll talk about that. I don't know, it's hard to define his shooting as a strength or a weakness right now because just pure numbers wise, and if you watch it, he was pretty inconsistent, so it's easy to classify his shooting ability as a weakness, but I actually really like his motion. I think he's got good footwork. I think he's got good mechanics. I think it's just tightening it up very slightly, and I think that he could be a really, really good three-point shooter. You mentioned the improvement. I got to say something about it because that's always one of my favorite things to bring up with guys. And I'll look at it sometimes throughout the course of a career at the college basketball level. But I mean, we're talking through half a season, which is pretty darn impressive. He's going to come in as one of the younger players in this draft, I believe, as well. So he's got a lot of upside. He's definitely raw, but this is the kind of guy who I said it with Kuminga last year and I throw it in there, but this is a guy who I legitimately think could be a superstar if he's in the right system and he's able to develop appropriately because he's got a lot of skills. He's just
Yeah,
really got to fine tune some things. A few other notes that I had on strengths: he is great in the pick and roll. That's one of his strengths right now offensively. We haven't mentioned defensively too. He's very versatile, knows spacing, knows his role, can guard guys one on one, has great length and speed to defend multiple positions. Just a very versatile defender right now, and I think that's definitely going to be a strength of his from day one. Not that I think he's going to be the kind of guy you draft and gets a ton of minutes in year one, but if he was going to get minutes somewhere, it would be because of his defensive ability right now. Weaknesses, I didn't have down a ton. I think the strength is a little bit of a concern. That's going to stop him from being elite, from having a strong post game and finishing at the basket. And defensively as well. He's not going to be, he has the length to guard bigger guys, but he definitely doesn't have the overall strength to do so. So I think that's going to be a setback for him just early on in his career. And then I mentioned just offensively, I would just say his consistency, because he's got a good motion, he's got a high IQ, he's got playmaking ability. I think he has the ability to really be a true all-around kind of player. So I like his upside quite a bit, and I'll throw it in there just while we're talking, while I'm on that train of thought. But I do think that he has the most potential of any international prospect this year. So what do you have for his weaknesses, Caveman?
Yeah, you mentioned it's weird because like obviously the strength is probably the biggest thing to mention, but other than that, like it's tough. Like I think it's just he just needs to work on his just overall game. I'd say just nothing needs an overhaul. I'd say, or nothing needs like major work. It's just him just becoming better, and that sounds weird and that sounds generic, but I think that's what it is with him, and that it's hard to pinpoint a ton as a necessarily a weakness, which makes him more and more interesting guys. Because if he's one of those he's a weird case where I think he has superstar potential, and that's weird. It's a little weird to think of it that way because he's so undeveloped in a lot of aspects of his game. But it's the potential is there, so it's just he's a weird guy to judge.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that. What do you have for ideal fits then?
I mean, to me, I think the best fit is OKC. I mean that seems to have 95 picks. They're probably gonna trade half of them for picks in 15 years, or something like that. So, I mean they're picking right. I mean, it seems like they're picking everywhere in the first round, but one of those picks is in his range. Yeah, they pick. Where do they pick? So they pick at 30.
12.
There's only 2 firsts this year for him.
Oh, they have what, number 4 too?
See, this is one where I can see them.
Or no, 2. Sorry, gosh.
Packaging a 30th and a second. They're 95 second round picks and moving up a little bit in the first round and possibly taking a guy like him. Because this what is this one? This one has him going 14 to the Cavs. So he's a very interesting. I think when you're talking back end of the lottery to somewhere in the first round, you don't get a ton of guys with superstar potential at that point in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes him like any player, any team where you can just go and develop and not be asked to contribute a ton right away. So the Thunder makes the most sense for me. I also wouldn't hate him on your Spurs. I think that would be. I mean, we talk about. I mean, no offense to Pop, but this whole no superstar kind of just boring team basketball. Just kind of everybody plays your role. Like we've seen where that's gotten them past couple of years. Hasn't really worked out too much. So they get a guy with superstar potential, which is something I think is what the Spurs need. And like I said, the Spurs pick at 20, so if he's there, they pick at 20 and 25. So either one of those spots. I mean, if I would consider him at 20 if I'm the Spurs, just because they need superstar potential, and at that point in the draft, the Spurs have been kind of unlucky because part of the reason why it's frustrating that they're hanging on to this false hope or whatever is the fact that they haven't been able to really get a good draft pick. They've kind of been stuck in purgatory or just kind of this no man's land for draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
So they finally have some potential to draft this. If they can take, it's interesting. The works off I think if they can take a safer floor guy at 9, and then if Dieng's there at 20, they can kind of do things backwards and draft the superstar potential guy later and get more value out of that pick. So I'm very interested. The Spurs. This is the more I talk about it, the more I want the Spurs to get this guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would be happy with him going there. You are right, too, about them being in purgatory. I mean, one of the ways they built their dynasties was with 2 number 1 overall picks in David Robinson and Tim Duncan. I mean, like, I just wish they had that 1 year over the last few years where they just completely stunk and got the first overall pick. But they've just been, like, barely out of the playoffs, and they keep picking from, like, 9 to 13. And you're like, you can hit on guys there, but Kawhi Leonard's don't grow on trees. So, I mean, they should, but they don't. So, yeah, I mean, I have the Thunder as well. I do think his upper tier is probably the Cavs at 14. I did have them down. I think positionally it makes a lot of sense for him, and he could fill a role for them even early on defensively. I had the Rockets as well. I think that he could fit in there. They don't have another late first round pick, but if they were able to somehow slide in there, I would really like him in Detroit. He would be able to develop with that young core, and I don't know realistically how they would trade up back into the first round. They'd probably have to give up future picks to do it, but I just like his fit there. And then I also had Minnesota down as well. I think he could fill a depth role early on and then play behind some of those guys they have and take on a bigger role in the future. But I mentioned, so I do think he has quite a bit of upside. I mentioned Kuminga earlier. That's one of my NBA comparisons for him. I mean, it's not that strong because Kuminga hasn't been playing that long yet, but the one that stuck out to me, and I was like, yeah, of course other people are going to have that one, was Nicholas Batum, which I saw quite a bit. And that was one of the first ones that came to mind. The other one that I kind of like is Kyle Anderson of the Grizzlies now, who's been a pretty versatile big man for the Grizzlies over the last few years now. Good playmaker, secondary ball handler. Then the last one I'll throw out just as his upper tier, I think, is Paul George. If he really was able to bring all of his skill set together,
Oh
I
yeah.
think if he was to hit his superstar ceiling, I think Paul George would be his closest comparison.
Yeah, I like it. I think Paul George is still is a superstar in this league. Yet, so yeah, I like that. That's why I wish I'm upset I didn't think of that comparison, but you know, life goes on, I guess. I'm gonna throw a bit of an old school name out there. What about Tayshaun Prince?
Dang, I love Tayshaun Prince. Yeah, I'm all for that.
I've been trying to get more in your mindset. You're more old school, so I was like, huh.
I know, and I've been doing the reverse. I'm like, I'm gonna try to make it relevant now so people know these players. It's like,
So like
do
I'm gonna appease Jordan and try to think of some old school names for some of the comparisons for some of these guys. But yeah, Tayshaun. I mean, I don't think Tayshaun was ever a superstar. But I think Tayshaun Prince is a very solid and good floor for him. I think no, not floor. Now that I think about it. Tayshaun Prince is like a middle ground
Yeah.
for
Yeah, that's fair.
Ian. Not a because I don't think he is so surefire that Tayshaun Prince would be a floor. But like I said, he's very interesting. I don't know if he's gonna come like completely has a chance to completely bust or fall off the map. But I also that that superstar potential is it seems a little far fetched, but it's definitely attainable, which makes him one of the most interesting prospects. We don't see it that often. No matter how strong the draft class is, you don't see guys that could possibly go past 20 with superstar. Trying to think when's the last like kind of I mean I'm just gonna say it. I don't think he has this level of superstar potential. But I did see some Giannis comparisons to him.
The heck, wow.
I mean it doesn't get much more
I
higher
mean,
praise.
okay.
But they're kind of
I mean, coming into the league, yeah. I mean, if people forget where Giannis came from.
yeah, they had very similar. Giannis had a very similar frame coming into the league.
Yeah, he did.
But then, like, I don't believe in him enough. I'm sorry. I do not believe in him
I
enough
think
that he'll be Giannis. But I mean, they're very similar players coming in. So
I think that I am gonna die happy now because we're talking about the next Giannis. You said something positive about defense today in the Mark Williams episode. I think, and you mentioned Tayshaun Prince. Like, I don't need to accomplish anything more in life, honestly, at this point. So I'm just gonna end it at that because I'm happy. See you guys next time.